Mayur, can we start now? Are you there? Please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Yeah. So please share your screen again because
you can't see my screen.
Not yet. In the meantime, I will introduce you to the audience.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's coming up. Yeah, we can see the screen now.
Great.
So it is my proud privilege to introduce today's expert speaker for session on innovation and startup ecosystem for campus entrepreneurship. Our guest speaker is Mr. Mayur Toshniwal, who is a chartered accountant with over 10 years of work experience in advisory and consultancy. He is an ex-PwC and currently serving as a partner at Qubit Capital, which is a technology-based investment bank helping startups raise venture capital and debt across the globe. He heads the funding and deals division at Qubit. He is also an angel investor in some of the early stage startups. So students, it's a great opportunity for you to interact with Mr. Mayur Toshniwal in today's session and learn as much as possible from him as what is his criteria for investing in early stage ventures, right? And I expect that some of you will definitely launch your own ventures in near future. So
Great,
with this, I welcome Mr. Mayur Toshniwal to present his talk. Over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Ashish. That was very kind of you to introduce me. Before starting the session, I would like to start with a popular prologue, rather. It says, the only thing once worse than starting something and failing is not starting something at all. Said as Dr. Ashish introduced, I help startups.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So at Qubit Capital, we help startups in raising capital from venture capitalist funds, debt funds across the globe. I am a chartered accountant by profession, and I started my career working for PwC. After having worked there for more than 7 years, I started Qubit Capital with two other co-founders. Having spoken with over 200 founders till date and sit through over 500 investor pitches myself, I consider myself lucky to be a part of this ecosystem and experience the madness and rush firsthand every single day. I believe people from 20s, 30s, 40s, even people after retiring at the age of 60 are coming forward to experiment things, try new things out, giving it a chance. So I personally believe that students or people getting out of college campus, it's a massive opportunity to try their hands on entrepreneurship and explore this firsthand themselves. While I personally believe a subject on startup or entrepreneurship is something that can never be taught, explained, or maybe educated to someone, you essentially have to burn your hands through to experience. But I believe each and every mistake that you make along the way becomes a lesson and a step closer to success. And as I said, very soon you all will be out of college, or some of you may already have. In my personal experience, this is just the right time to explore yourself, to bring out your strengths, identify your weaknesses, and find a mission in life. It may be working for an MNC or for a startup or self-employed, but whatever it is, initial 2 years are the years you should spend identifying yourself, as this is the age where you have so less to lose and so much to gain, right? Today's presentation I have divided into 5 small slides. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I'd rather want this session to be more of interactive. I can share my experiences, clarify some of your doubts. So the first is, what is a startup, right? There are thousands of definitions out there on Google. It could be anything ranging from an entrepreneurship to business, whatever. But I'd like to break down a startup in 2 phases, or rather 2 things. So one is, there was a complicated problem and some people dared to change the or challenge the status quo and came up with a solution. You can think of hundreds of examples of such startups who fall in this particular phase, right? There was a complicated problem of not being able to order food online or not being able to catch a cab. you know Ola came up, Zomato came up, and then they challenged what was there existing, and then they came up with an excellent solution. Similarly, there is already a solution in some of the cases, but some people dare to innovate and find a more efficient way to solve these problems. These are the second kinds of startup, I believe. Anything, electric vehicle, you already had your ICE vehicles, petrol vehicles, diesel vehicles. You do not need an EV, but people came up with a more promising solution where you can save on fossil fuels, save on environment, and still get to go around. So startup is something where either you are solving a problem or you are finding a better way to to a existing solution. Now, many of you think that, why a startup? There are different reasons in everyone's head that why someone would go for a startup or rather go for a self-employment. A lot of people think that they are not a 9 to 5 person, or they do not like a boss hovering over their heads every now and then. So that's why they would like to go for a startup. So let me clarify this right away. That's not the right way to go about it, because in a startup, you are going to do both the things at an extreme level than an employment. You will be working for 16 to 18 hours a day. You do not have, or you would not have a boss, but you would have investors more and much aggressive than your bosses, who would be hovering over your head to grow, to make them returns, to do whatnot. So if you have these 2 things in mind, that's why you want to start up, then don't. If you really want to start up, then there may be any of the following missions. You may want to bring about a change and make wealth over it. Yes, definitely. Anything that you are changing, that is solving the problem, that will ought to bring wealth for you as well as your investors. I personally do not believe people saying that they are starting up only because they want to change the society. Yes, that's one of the primary reasons. But on top of it, they know that they are going to make a lot of wealth that they cannot in an employment. Secondly, you want to be financially independent. That's right. Getting a salary, month to month paycheck is like a drug. You will wait for it and wait for it and keep waiting for it, right? But where you want to be financial independent, you start your journey, you get into a startup, you work for yourself, and then you make a change. Excitement and passion towards solving the problem. You may have identified the problem, you may have a solution towards it, but unless you are excited about it, you are passionate about it, you are not going to go there, because there will be hundreds of things that you will be doing on a daily basis as an entrepreneur that you can't even imagine today. And unless until you have the grit, you have the passion towards it, you will not be able to sustain. Last but not the least, you want to create jobs. That's one of the major reasons I got into entrepreneurship myself, leaving my lucrative job at PwC. So all in all, startup is nothing. It's a vision which you really want to follow, make a change in the society, make a name for yourself, and on top of it, make good wealth around it. Now, it will come to most of your minds that what exactly is it that you need to do or that you ought to have before you get into a venture yourself, right? So it's a very simple analogy that we particularly follow at Qubit Capital. We break down the essential requirements into these five things. First of all, an idea. There is a rail of ideas in everyone's head. I am sure about it because ideas are flowing. You are studying. You're observing everyday things. There is a rush of ideas, but idea itself does not make any sense. What you need to do is you need to execute that idea, right? And for that execution, you need a right team. Today, you must be socializing with a lot of your friends, a lot of your family friends, but remind me of one thing that when it comes to execution, it's not only that you want to take your friends along with it or you want to take your family along with it. No. In order to execute a particular idea, you ought to have a right team. You ought to have complementary skill set people in your circle. You may not like a technology person, but you may still need him on your team because you need him to execute your product. You get him on board, you find a way to work out with him or her, and then you execute. Thirdly, right timing. I think timing is the foremost and the most important thing before you actually go ahead and start something. Many of you would know that before YouTube, a startup called Y.com had started in 2000s, in early 2000s, but it could not grow because there were bandwidth issues at the time in the US. Just after 3 years of Y.com getting down, YouTube came into being, and it's what it is in front of us every day, every minute. Just because they had the same product, but the timing was right. There was technological advancement. There were uh, bandwidth issues solved. 50% of the US had already gone on internet by the time. So I believe timing is one thing that definitely makes a lot of sense when you start something, when you ideate something. Fourth and fifth is business model and funding. Business model is something that you need not think of on day one. No big successful startup started with a business model. Instagram did not have a business model back then. WhatsApp did not have a business model back then. They just created a solution at the right time, and then they thought how to monetize it, how to build a business model around it, right? And fifth, funding will follow. If you get the above things right, funding will follow. And especially coming from a funding background, we or most of the founders think that investors are something to be chased for, right? But one thing that we really should understand is what you are doing as a founder, investors are also doing the same for their founders, for their investors. So when you are looking for good investors for your particular company, investors at the same time are looking for a good company to invest in. So it's like a give and take situation. It's not that one has more strength over other. So if you get the above four things right, funding will definitely follow. Then the another most important thing that I would like to highlight is, see, in your 20s, in your early 20s, or by the time you are in your late teens, I believe it's an excellent time to explore something, to find out something to ideate something in your circle. And I'm not saying that you do because people are saying, or I am saying, or your mentors are saying. No, you only do it if you have the vigor to do it. This is the age where there is the optimal risk to return reward ratio. You are at your least risky age. You can try and fail. You can spend 2 3 4 years in doing that. You will not lose out much in your life. You will eventually get there where you could have if you would have started in your 19s or 20s. But if you strike successfully, if you are able to achieve those things, then the return is immense. You will not be able to handle that kind of a return. That's the kind of return I'm talking about. And this is what we are seeing in the US, now in the Indian markets also. A league of entrepreneurs are coming out of their fresh from college, some of them college dropouts. But and this is where I think that that's the optimal age to do something, to explore something. You can get into a job right away. You will get good jobs. There are good companies out there who are willing to hire you people. But if you think that you really need to do something, you really need to get out of something, challenge something, make your name, create a legacy, this is the right time. Then coming to the India factor, back then I know a lot of founders we are raising funds for today. They started their early startups in 2006, 2008, when even Flipkart wasn't born as we see it today. They raised money at that point in time when internet was not even a thing in India. And today, if we look back, and today if we 15 years hence, there is an entire population that is using smartphone and internet today in India. Over 32 crores people, over 32 crores people are using a smartphone in India today. 50% of us are now have come onto internet, use internet on a daily basis. So this is all nothing but an indication that there is a big pool of audience, there is a big pool of users. And since there are the population that we have, there is going to be a lot of problems that are going to arise. And we need people to solve it. We need people to ideate about it. People are there to pay for the solutions. But all we need to do is we need to realize these opportunities. And of course, there is still a very low cost of doing business in India. There are startups I have seen, they are very frugal. They are managing a team of 20 people at a monthly spend of less than 4 lakhs. This is what they're paying because people are willing to experiment. People are willing to go for equity than a fixed pay. This is the kind of mentality that is being developed, and India is literally holding the baton here. And last but not the least, government support. We meet with a lot of government officials, and we really can't believe that even government is thinking so much on these lines, where they are conducting seminars, they are conducting startup exhibitions every now and then. They have initiated a Startup India campaign. Tax holidays are there, whatnot. Some of the very young ministers in think tank, in the bureaucracy, a lot of these people have the vision to create a Silicon Valley of itself in India and bring people, and not letting people go outside of India to work for bigger startups, So we need to see these things, imagine these things, and see that where is India moving. There today, if you ask me, some of the very very promising sectors as we see, there is a lot of movement in electric segment. EV is going to change the world. 2030, 2032, the kind of electric vehicle penetration that's going to be there on the roads, it's unimaginable. And a lot of people have already started building products over the layers of EV, be it startups in relation to service, be it startups in relation to spare parts, manufacturing EVs, designing EVs, whatnot. Then logistics is again going to be a huge market because e-commerce has picked up. A lot of people are now moving from offline shopping to online shopping. This all directly relates to logistics. I've seen people starting logistics startup even today, where there are big companies like Delivery, there are big companies like Shadowfax, but people are still realizing opportunities in this market. And the best part about India is there is always going to be a room for innovation and room for market. It's not one takes all market, especially when it comes to India. I believe me explaining these things or me trying to motivate you to start something or at least start thinking on these lines is not going to create that kind of an impact unless you yourself believe that there is something in it for you to succeed, something in it for you to think about. So these are some of the suggestions that I give to each and every founder I speak with, be it they are idea stage, whether they are pre-series stage, whatever. Consume knowledge from wherever you can. Make it a habit. Start reading books, start reading novels, start reading business magazines. No matter you get into entrepreneurship, no matter you get into job, this is something that's going to be with you forever. These are There are some of the conversations that you are able to strike with some of the smartest people in the room just based on the knowledge you have consumed in some of the novel or some of the business books. And that's all what you need. That's one thing that can that you are able to strike with the other person, and then he'll remember you. Secondly, your circle matters. As a lot of people say, network is your new net worth. I believe spend time in choosing the the stage of school where we used to select friends based on the kind of fun we are having or the kind of things that we're doing together. But when it comes to a professional world, and if you are eyeing that something, the goal that you really want to achieve, you start thinking on those lines that who are those people who you want to keep very close to you. There are people markets on an everyday basis, right? And there are other groups that I've seen who discuss where to party next, where to go out for a holiday next. There is a big difference between the two groups. So it's your choice which group do you want to be a part of. But if you look back 4 years, 5 years after you start working or after you reach a particular age, you look back and see that actually the kind of business you are able to generate or the kind of connections you are able to generate through your circle is something that's going to be with you forever, and that circle is going to make your business, that circle is going to make your life. Another thing I really recommend everyone, and something that I realized very late in my life, is find a mentor very early in your life. Someone you can confide in, someone you really trust with their advice. Find that mentor early in your life. There are people spending millions of rupees on business coaches today because they got late, they did not find a mentor early in their life. So you are at the right time, you are at the right edge of that time. See who do you confide in. It may be a teacher, it may be a consultant, it may be any of your family friends, but someone who is really good at advice and someone you really think that they know you. Having a mentor by your side, you will need a mentor at every big decision of your life. Fourthly, I would strongly recommend that whatever career path you choose, be it employment, be it self-employment, but if you plan to go down self-employment or starting a startup in your coming years, I recommend you go work or intern for a startup. That's something you should do it without thinking twice, because this is what I've realized, having worked for a big organization and having worked for a nimble organization. So if you work in a small company or a startup or a starting up company, There you wear many hats in a single day. Morning you may be an operations guy, in the noon you may be a sales guy, in the evening you may be a hiring guy. But you get to experience almost all the business functions in a span of 1 to 2 years that you may not be able to get or experience in a mature organization. So do this, go work for a startup, and you will see the kind of uh, the kind of hustle an entrepreneur makes, the kind of struggle an entrepreneur makes just to keep things moving on an everyday basis. I'll share a very small story with you. We have this wonderful client. They are into logistics support to some of the big e-com players today in India. He started his business in 2015, where he used to pick and drop deliveries from Amazon's warehouse on his own motorcycle every day, 10 deliveries to 15 deliveries a day, both the founders. In a span of 5 years, they are today at a top line at a turnover of more than 300 crores with over 15,000 riders under their own belt. So, but they knew what it takes to get here. They did it. They did deliveries themselves for good 6 months until they realized that, until they found out what are the problem areas, until they sat, they did lunch with riders, what are their problems and how can they offer a better solution to them. So I think start thinking on those lines. This is actually the right time. Once you start thinking, you start feeling those things, and for that I told you some of the best practices that people do, that we see people doing. And yeah, so I'm open for questions. As I said, I did not want to keep talking for a long time, and rather would like to clarify some of your doubts. I am easily reachable at my email also. You can feel free to write to me any of the questions if you have. But yeah, I'm open for questions now.
So thank you very much, Mr. Toshniwal. That was a good introduction. And now I request all students to ask questions. And before that, they need to raise their hand. So raise hand and unmute yourself and then ask the question. Any questions? Okay, Sanjeev Kumar, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you for providing us such valuable advices. Sir, like you mentioned that in order to start our career, we should look for a startup to work at in our initial stages so that we get a broad spectrum to work at. Like you said, many you will be many heads. So,
Right.
sir, my question to you is that, like, how is it possible to look for a person who is starting up and, convincing him to allow you to work with him? Because, if somebody have a very good idea, why would they let me in their circle to work along them? Because we have seen so many cases of theft, idea theft. So, like, why would somebody be, interested in me, and how should I approach a startup, and where? Like, I don't know where I should go to look for a startup to work at.
That's an excellent question, Sanjeev, and I'm glad you really brought this up because a lot of people uh, have this kind of this query in their mind. So let me clarify you in this thing, Sanjeev. See, gone are the days where people used to think that they have an idea and they would not like to get this idea out in the market, hire people, or keep running the product in disguise. I think if you look back 5 years from now, 5 years before, you will see that a lot of these controversies happened where people were working in stealth. They raised capital in stealth, did not get the business model out, and eventually failed. But today people have matured and they know that what they need is a right team for execution. So if you really come across a startup who is building or who is just on an idea base, my suggestion would be to not go work for those startups until unless they are vocal about what they're doing and what they expect out of you. So that's a big no from my side. If they tell you that they are not ready to still get into the market or hire people, then I think it's a good exit for you. Now, what I mean to say is you go work for startups who have already started up or who have a product market fit in the market, who already have a product in market. There is a lot of chatter on LinkedIn these days. You should spend a lot of time over LinkedIn. Almost every fifth or sixth post on LinkedIn today is for a hiring post. Subscribe to a LinkedIn premium. Trust me, people like us will approach you for joining the startups because they know that, because the founders know that they need human than a mature person. Plus, another thing is a lot of people offer either a variable pay or a very, very low pay. And then you get to be a part of the early joiners where you become eligible for equity later on. So that's also an opportunity that a lot of startups offer. So all in all, what I would say is there are a couple of sources where you can look for those jobs. Number one, be very active on LinkedIn. You will start getting a lot of messages. You will see posts of such job opportunities. Secondly, there are, I think, at least 5 to 7 websites where you can actually look out for startup jobs. For example, Coffee Mugs. Then there is a Founder Circle. Uh, I can maybe share the links. If you ping me on my email, I can share some of very prominent links where you can go subscribe, and then you can see some of the prominent startups hiring there, and you can apply for a job.
No, sir. Thank you so much. That was very nice. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, we would like to have your email, please. That's all.
Sure, Sanjeev. I'll put it in the chat box.
Sanjeev, please lower your hand. And if there is any other question from the students, please raise your hand. So if there are no more questions from students or they are still pondering over it, I would like to request Mr. Toshniwal, can you highlight the importance of having a good team? Like you have discussed very well the reasons why students should not be wary of sharing their ideas, and that stealing ideas is not viable. Similarly, the other aspect that these enthusiasts and newbies lack is the notion of team, and that normally funding is given on the basis of team strength rather than on the basis of idea strength.
Right. So, Dr. Ashish, I think team play is, and as I said in my presentation also, team for execution is something that really matters. And being at campus, to create that team or to create that circle who could come at a later point in life to do something together. If you ask me today, I I do not have that opportunity to be surrounded by 100, 200 people who I know who is expert in what, right? That's what college students are able to do because they study in the same campus. So it's a massive opportunity, and a lot of startups, we only, unfortunate part is we only get to hear the IITs and IIM stories, but that's not the case anymore. 50 to 60% of the startups in the last 12 months have emerged from tier 2 tier 3 cities. So one thing that's very straight is it's not an IIM or an IIT game anymore. It does not depend on which college you come from, it does not depend on which city you come from. The another important aspect is, if you go back and read stories about some of the best startups, they they have emerged or they have been founded by people who are from the same college, who have been from the same college or from the same institute. And that's exactly what the point I was trying to make is, this is a very good time to identify like-minded people, to bring those like-minded people together and try to strike something. You may not start 6 months, 1 year from now, but eventually, if you like to start later in your life, you should have someone to look forward to, that okay, I can use him for a technology person, I can get along him because he has a good business acumen. I've interacted with him on the campus. So, and it's a very good opportunity to do that being a student.
Thank you very much. Students, any other question? Okay, they might be still be thinking on it. So, will it be possible for you to share some of the startup stories where you have invested personally or through your Qubit Capital, and uh, why did you choose to invest in those startups? So that they can get some cue and can approach you for with some of these ideas.
Sure, that's a good one, Dr. Ashish. So, um, so one of my recent investments in my personal capacity was into a drone tech startup. So we we have heard in the US, in the UK markets, that there are remote-based drones that are doing logistic support, that are doing deliveries, in the US. There are at least 15 to 20 big drone companies that have come into being in India, who actually aspire to be one of the prime logistics support. So let's take an example. If I were to transfer a 3 kg parcel 15 times from two centers in a city, there needs to be at least two riders, two motorcycles running to and fro, a lot of wastage of fuel or battery, whatever. They are trying to solve this problem by putting a drone that can carry up to 5 kg of payload, up to 5 kg of the load, and it can keep the cost that is being incurred on manpower as well as on the fuel. So it's very futuristic. It's not going to happen in another 1 year or 2 years. But the technology itself is fascinating, and that's what caught my attention. Drone tech is one of the most promising things that are coming up in India, even in defense, in commercials, in logistics, in construction. So that's something I really look forward to, and I am now a part of it, so I'm really excited about it. Then also I would like to share one more thing here, Dr. Ashish, that today there are a lot of incubation funds, accelerator funds that have come up. They invest in the tune of 50 lakhs to a crore, at times 2 crores, depending upon the promise that they see in the business. So these accelerators prove to be very, very helpful for upcoming or budding entrepreneurs. They not only invest financially, but they also have the right set of people to advise, to mentor. As I said, they do the right mentoring also. So there are at least there are a lot of such funds that have come up in the last 2 to 3 years, and some of them are pertaining to or related to a group of campuses. Some of them pertain to a particular city or a particular sector, and it's all available on Google. If you just need to be curious about it, and you will happen to see the list that, okay, these are the people who support an idea, who would like to hear my idea, right? So long as I have an idea, I have a right team, I can go to them, I can talk to them. It's not going to be easy to get a meeting with those people, but unless until you try, you are not going to find it out.
Thank you so much. Let's say there are many a times when students would approach us, they will say that they have very good ideas and they would have some team, but they lack funding, right, at that point in time. So, what would you recommend? What should be the strategy for a student startup? I mean, they will be having some pocket money to fund development. So should they develop technology or focus on customer validation, customer traction, try to get some customer traction before approaching investors, or should they focus on technology first?
Right. So I think invest uh, investment or getting funds is an enabler, not anything more than that. It's not something that will make your idea successful. In fact, I believe it's a liability. You have that timeline over your head, you need to give those returns. I think in order to start up, there could be two kinds of startups. One is capital intensive and one is not very capital intensive. For example, the drone startup I was talking about, it's a capital intensive. You may have the right team, you may have the right idea and technology, but you need funds even for a pilot. So there, I believe you need to bring some people together to invest. And it's not that you need millions of dollars at once. All you need to make is a prototype. You have a prototype, you have a successful version of it, you have tested it in live scenarios, you are good to go for funding. You have proved yourself, now you can go for a expansion funding. Then there is another idea that is not very capital intensive, which is 90% of the times. There you it on a very, very smaller level or a macro level. I'll give you a very small example. We were we were attending a pitch, and one of the founders, he wanted to get into an edtech sector. He came up with a product where they would like to sell it to the students, sell some courses to the students, etc. And at a very, very early stage, one of an investor friend, he very clearly pointed out that, did you try and sell your product to 100 parents or 200 parents in a month? Did you approach a shopping mall on a weekend and talk to some of the parents that would they like to buy this product or would they like to pay for this product, right? So the small point is, you have a product, you go out in the market, you create your audience, you get your audience, you test your audience. If they are willing to pay for that product, how much are they willing to pay for the product? Have you actually acquired some of the customers and tested their results on their students? If yes, then yes, you are in the right path. You have the right analogy to draw before the investors. All you now need to do is expand. You have you have applied this in, let's say, in Noida, you have applied this in Ghaziabad, or let's say any other city, or a very 5 kilometer radius of a particular city. That does not matter. You need to get into the market and apply it, because otherwise investors will see that you want to experiment using their money, and no one will put money on just on an experiment. So prove it in a small area and then go for investments to scale it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the students? So we will share the questions with Mr. Toshniwal as they come to me. So with this, we come to the end of this session. Ms. Ms. Ekta Singh, do you want to make any comments?
Thank you, sir. It was really a great session. I hope students have learned a lot because they have a lot of questions. Usually they ask questions to us that how to become an entrepreneur, or what should I do, or my idea gets stolen, or what should be my first step, or what are the risks that I can take, minimal risk, calculative risk and all. So I think it was a very nice session. Thank you, Mr. Toshniwal. Thank you very much. That's it, Dr. Mani. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Singh. So with this, we thank from Amity, convey our best regards for such a fascinating and illuminating session by Mr. Mayur Toshniwal from Qubit Capital. We will keep in touch, and we will bother you in near future also with our questions and our requests for similar sessions for another group of students. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Dr. Ashish. Thank you for having me on this session.
Mr. Toshniwal, I'm sorry, Sanjeev wants to ask one last question.
Yeah.
So please bear with us. Yes,
No,
Sanjeev,
no.
please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Sir, wanted to ask you, like, what would it take for a student to come and work with you? Like, if somebody is really interested in, like you mentioned that it's very important for you to have a mentor. And if one of us would want to come and work for you, like with you, and understand the market really well, what would it take for you to hire that person to work with you? Like,
Great, Sanjeev. So feel free to share your CV with me. My email ID is mayur@qubit.capital. And what we look, so as a matter of fact, we hire interns who are undergrads or who are pursuing CFA, pursuing engineering at times, because we need some technology people also. So what we look at, we know that there will not be any relevant experience with the students as of now to come work for us. But what we look for is passion, and the that's all what we look for, right? So we really like to evaluate CVs from you guys. As I said, you can reach out to me on mayur@qubit.capital. Send your CVs across. I will have my team process it, and definitely, if we believe that we are a right fit for each other, we are very much open for interns. We have a lot of interns working from Christ, from IIMs in Calcutta, from various universities today. So feel free to write it to me.
okay, sir, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Toshniwal. So we will meet soon, and we would like to host you in person also in one of the upcoming sessions.
Sure, Dr. Mani, it would be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.